Okay, so in module 1, we are looking forward to ASD concept as a whole. We are getting deeper into the definition and the diagnostic criteria given by DSM-5, the medical book, and also the red flag signs, the causes, a brief, comprehensive concept of autism spectrum disorders as a whole, with the subheadings and the chapters you will be reading through. Out of all these things, what is most important is definitely the red flag signs, because as it's being an autism awareness course and we are into it, so the whole purpose of this module is to identify kids having autism or may have autism. As a teacher, as a neighbor, as a parent, as a friend, it is our duty or responsibility as a social citizen actually to identify kids in our surroundings, whether they are having any difficulty, or it may be autism, it may not be autism, but we really need to know the red flag signs, that whether the child is following the developmental ladder, whether the child is speaking as per age, whether the child can play like the neurotypical kids, like the pretend play, this playing like a teacher, playing the role play like mother, or with the kitchenwares, we are playing some household games, whether the child is having a very usual play pattern, or the child is having very atypical play pattern. Maybe he or she is just engrossed with a piece of paper for long hours, just gazing at the piece of paper and shaking them and taking some visual stimulus to the corner of the eyes. Are they taking double vision like this by pressing the corner of the eyes and taking double vision? So these are some of the very classical characteristics of persons or kids on the spectrum. So we need to know about all this, and with definition we need to focus on three major things. One is the lack of social skills. Age appropriate usual social skills are not present. There is a lack of communication, language, both verbal and non-verbal communication are affected, like the non-verbal communication, the gestures, the frowning, the facial expressions, whether I'm smiling or whether I'm just not liking something, these are the finer facial expressions. All these gestures we do not get to see much in them, so they are more or less, they are having a very flat effect, not very emotive. So the non-verbal and the verbal communication both are affected to a great extent. 50% of them are having speech and 50% are not having speech. And even the kids who are having speech, they are having a very typical ASD pattern of speech, with echolalia, with repeating words, with limited vocabulary, and with some use of jargons, meaningless sounds, meaningless words. There are some typical pattern of ASD speech. Those are present in them. The conversation or the communication may not be contextual or meaningful or situational all the time. In fact, most of the time they miss out on that. So that is there. And third is the repetitive and uh, stereotypical patterns of behaviors which we find in them. That's like body rocking, like front and back body rocking, or it can be sideways also. There can be hand flapping like this kind of motor behavior is continuously going on for quite frequently or throughout the day. So this kind of stereotypical repetitive behaviors are present, and also they are pretty inflexible and rigid. They do not like certain changes, they do not like change of environment, people, place. They really like routine life with set people and set environment, because something sudden and change actually confuse them, and they really take a lot of time to process them and again settle down. So that requires a lot of energy and effort on their part. So that's why they do not like to go about it. Find out what autism spectrum disorder is, why we call it a spectrum, and there's a huge range actually. If you have seen one individual with autism, you have actually seen only one person with autism, because each and every person on the spectrum is very, very different from each other. They are all unique in their own strengths and also in their difficulties. So that is the entire purpose of module 1, to give an introductory concept of what ASD is all about.